We'd like to give a special thank you to picosupply.com for sponsoring our podcast.
Welcome to the Homestead Podcast. You are joining co-hosts Carol and Jamie of twogalshomesteading.com. If you found yourself here, that means you are ready to take responsibility for what you eat, your family's health, and your family's well-being while living a simpler life. You can do this and have fun, saving money along the way. Let them help you unleash the homesteader within. By doing more with less, you will gain what is needed to create confidence, impact, and change in your life and the lives around you. Let's start homesteading. Let's start now.
From cow to butter, making raw milk butter on your homestead. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Carol.
How are you today?
I am good.
All right. Same here, enjoying our nice weather. And our topic today is butter. And that is something that happens on my homestead about 5 times a week, if not every single day we make butter. All depends on how much fluid milk I have sold and whether we have cream that needs processing. And so it kind of fluctuates in there. But I would say on average, we do butter on our farm 5 days a week. At least. Yeah, I would say so. And sometimes we do 2 batches in one day, which is 8 to 10 pounds of butter.
In one batch or together?
Together.
Okay.
Yeah. We yield 3 to 4 pounds, or I should say 3 to 5 pounds per batch. Kind of depends on the cow thickness of the cream and the age of the cream.
Oh,
and our churn only holds a little over a gallon. And so for the most part, 1 quart of cream gives you 1 pound of butter. That's probably your average.
Do you separate your cream and then do your butter the same day, or do you do your cream and then do butter the next day?
No, we separate our cream on day 1. And we have found that it actually works better to have a little age on your cream.
Okay.
So you can do it the same day, but it seems like the yield is less. So it does better if you've separated your cream and you've let that cream chill for a day or 2 and then bring it back up to temperature. For us, that is right around 55 to 60 degrees. Works best with our milk, with our cream from on our farm. Now, I read other places it's different.
I suppose environment and type of cow, what they're fed.
Yeah, amount of cream, how thick your cream is, all those things affect that. But I thought maybe we'd first start a little bit about the history of butter.
Yeah.
And how long butter's been around. Now, my research took me all over the place.
I didn't go that deep.
Mine, it did. It took me all over, but I kind of gathered from several different websites, and they all kind of gave the same basic story that it's probably been around since 9000 BC. Perhaps someone, a shepherd or somebody, had sheep milk in, and then it said milk, not cream, it said milk. Put it in a sheepskin bag and tied it to the back of a sheep. And they went on a journey across to wherever, to market, to new fields, pastures, whatever. And at the end of that journey, he discovered when he took that milk bag off of the sheep that he's got this beautiful, wonderful, sweet treat in there. Have no idea
if that's
true or not.
Yep.
I've heard the same thing about cheese and how that was discovered, but they talk about using like a calf stomach or a sheep stomach where they got that rennet in there to make that. So that was a little bit different, but I'm not exactly sure if they just say milk and they really mean cream, because you really can't make butter from milk. You really have to separate the cream from the milk. In my research, that's kind of what I found, and they all think it was just kind of a little accident. And originally, butter did not come from cows. They came from other domesticated animals such as sheep, goats, and yaks. Cow butter is fairly new in the scope of how long butter's been around.
Yeah.
Then my research took me to, people stopped using animals to agitate their milk product to make butter. Then they just simply shaked it in a bag. In ancient Rome, butter was forbidden by their gods to consume. Oh. So they used it in cosmetics, and they used it for wound care. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, because it would have been a fermented product back then too.
Yeah.
I know that fermented products work really good as wound care.
Yeah. I just thought that was really interesting. It was forbidden by the gods.
Yeah. Somebody made up that rule. They wanted all the butter for themselves.
And who didn't snitch a little bit?
Yeah. It's like,
And it was also considered a sign of purity, and lots of times butter was used as something you give to the gods, a gift to gods.
Oh,
so
maybe
that they
that's
would
where
bless
it came
you,
from. That
that type of thing.
you weren't supposed to eat it. You were supposed to give it to God.
Yeah.
And then hence it was wasted.
Yeah. So that's really sad, isn't it? I also learned that the Northern Europeans, it said, due to the cold climate, and this was off of milkyday.com. They had a whole article on butter. They said that it was more popular as a use in Northern European countries than in the Southern European countries where ghee and olive oil, those things were used more, and that the Southern Europeans actually considered butter a barbaric item because Northern Europeans were not exactly the nicest people on the face of the earth.
Yes, I've gathered that from reading histories and watching movies. I don't know.
I just thought that was interesting that they didn't want to consume it because it was considered a barbaric food. But anyway, as my research into this went, it said that in 1860 is when industrialization of butter came about. So before that, most butter was made on the farm.
On the homestead.
Yeah, on the homestead. They, hand churned it. They industrialized it in the 1860s. And then by 1900, over half of the butter made in the United States was made in factories.
That's when the government started demanding the milk be pasteurized. Because that pathogens, people were getting sick. It's usually a cleanliness factor of people who's handling the product.
I'm just trying to figure out, when did pasteurization come about?
But when did they start requiring that it had to be pasteurized?
I think it was actually in the 1950s that it required that all milk be pasteurized. But I was just trying to think when Louis Pasteur actually created the process of pasteurization.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember those dates on that.
I don't either.
I did read that at the end of the 1870s is when a Swedish engineer named Carl Gustaf Patrik de Lavelle introduced the centrifugal cream separator, and that changed the industry completely. Instead of having to hand do that. And just a quick note to those people who are listening and know about dairy equipment, de Lavelle is a name. We actually have a de Lavelle milking system in our barn that is still around today.
Oh, okay.
So he must have started the whole thing. I mean, we have bulk tank down there. All of our milkers are de Lavelle. Our jar is de Lavelle. I mean, we have a lot of de Lavelle stuff in our.
So the name is still out there.
It's still out there, and I assume that he probably founded the company or whatever. I didn't go any farther than that.
When was that? The 1870s?
In the late 1870s. A very long time. I didn't even know that was a Swedish company, to be honest, until I was doing this little research here. And then, let's see. I got to go back to my notes here quick. It says, on the rise of the 20th century, Americans were consuming 18 pounds of butter per capita. And that's, in today's terms, that's about 1.5 sticks of butter per person on a weekly basis. And then the Great Depression hit and World War II. And butter suddenly became a luxury item and got very expensive. And so people stopped buying it or consuming because they didn't have a job or they didn't have enough money. And that's when margarine showed up. Yeah. Margarine was a cheap substitute for butter. Not very good for us, as we know today.
Yeah.
That's how margarine started showing up. And I know margarine was actually supposed to be something else at one time.
Yeah, I don't remember. I've read it.
Yeah, it was like a non-food item. And I think we've touched on that before.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. And now, of course, then in the 1980s, then they were like, cholesterol and butter's bad for you. Yep. And so margarine was still a big thing. I know it was a big thing in our home.
Oh, yeah. They started coming out with name brands, things that they used the word butter in their label so that people would buy it.
We used butter on our table, but when it come to baking, it was always margarine because margarine was cheap.
Yeah.
It's extremely cheap. And so our cookies, bars, anything we baked, bread, whatever, that was all margarine was used for all of that.
I remember my mom buying butter in the big chunk of square when we were littler. But then at one point she started buying more margarine, and I'm sure it was when I had 4 brothers, and when they got to be teenagers and the food consumption went up, she was saving money somehow.
Yep, I'm sure my mom. Not that we had lots of kids. There was only 3 of us. kids, but we were poor, but Dad insisted we have butter on the table. And
I could see that.
There was butter. It was always butter on the table, and margarine was used for other stuff because it didn't taste like butter. I don't care what they say. It doesn't taste like butter.
Because I think the biggest thing was that it's more spreadable.
Just true.
Yeah, because you don't spread butter out of the fridge.
No, you do not. Let's see. Okay, so our focus was going to be talking about making butter on your homestead. Now, you can make butter from store-bought cream. We are going to focus on using raw milk and raw cream to make your butter for this discussion. So when we talk about it, we're always going to be talking about raw butter. Making your own butter is actually quite a simple process.
It is.
You really you need cream. You need a vessel to put it into that seals, that has a lid on it, that's airtight or it doesn't leak.
It doesn't leak and you won't make a mess.
You don't need any other special equipment besides an arm that's strong and time.
Yep.
And you can make your butter in a jar by simply shaking it.
And who hasn't done that with their kids' school activity?
I was just going to say, we did it in like second grade for Thanksgiving. We made butter.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We put cream in a jar, and I don't know, there might have been marbles in there. I don't remember, but I remember everybody got to take their turn shaking it or whatever. So
it wasn't so bad.
Yes. I mean, really, it's not hard to do. Now, of course, we don't do that here.
No.
It's a little bit different process here, but it is as simple as that. If you want to do a little project and you want to keep your kids busy, that's one way to do it. And it takes anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes of shaking to get it to turn, because we did that a lot before we got our butter churn. We did it around here just to use up some of the excess cream that we had. While we drank coffee, where everybody's shaking quart jar with cream in it. Personally, I think knowing how to make butter is a very valuable skill and allows you to use your milk in one more way.
Yep.
And I mean, who doesn't love butter, really? If you've checked the price of butter lately in the store.
Yeah.
Being able to make your own, at least at the time of this podcast, butter in the store is not cheap. I just priced it, I do believe, in Walmart on their app. And I think Land O'Lakes, which is a local that's a Minnesota brand. And they were at Walmart, had it on sale, and I believe it was $5 for a pound.
Okay.
And that was the sale price.
Oh, okay.
The regular price was closer to $6 something, I think. And if you have your own cow.
Oh, you can taste, even my husband says he can taste the difference between store-bought and your butter. Oh, and I can too. I mean, but he's like, you can tell the difference.
Yeah. And of course, the stuff in the store is pasteurized.
Yep.
I think that really makes a difference too in the flavor. And then, of course, your benefit of having raw milk or raw cream used for your butter, because it just carries all those good things over. Let's see what's all in it. It's got antioxidants.
And inflammatory. I think I saw that. And actually, somewhere I read that it was like it helps with weight loss, even though it goes against everything we were taught in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Low fat was the thing in the 90s.
I was going to say, I believe that milk is a whole food. And so by consuming it, it has everything in it that helps you digest what's all important in that milk. It's a whole product. So you consume that and you can get all the vitamins and all the stuff without adding anything else to your diet.
Yep.
And so that carries over in your butter as well, if you're using raw cream for your butter. According to rawfarmusa.com, raw milk is full of immune boosting vitamins. It's a great source of healthy cholesterol, fatty acids, antioxidants, and also helps with nutrient absorption, which I just mentioned here about milk being a whole food. I will tell you that I do have some customers who do make butter from our milk, and these are homeschooling moms. These are your crunchy moms. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what they are.
That's what they're labeled.
They tell me that each kid gets a stick of butter and they just eat it that way.
Oh no,
that's how much they believe in butter,
the quality of butter, and the benefits of butter,
and the benefits of the butter. Now, I love butter, but I can't do that. But I thought that was really interesting. You talked about weight loss and stuff, and I have somebody who makes butter, and she actually makes kefir out of our cream. She eats an extremely high fat diet, and she is built like a stick.
Oh.
Yes. And so I truly believe if you have your gut health correct, you can consume a lot of fat and still be a thin person. I won't say that about myself.
No, me neither.
But I truly believe that just from the testimonials I get from the people who buy milk and cream from us.
If I make a point to drink. See, I'm not a big milk drinker, but if I make a point to get a glass of milk a day, I don't get late afternoon, like, oh, I need a snack type thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I feel more, I want to say content. That's not the word they use.
Full.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to our next topic, we are going to have a short word from picosupply.com.
Family-owned PeteCoSupply.com brings small-town customer service to their online farm store. PeteCoSupply.com specializes in automatic waterers from top brands such as Miraco, Jug, Franklin, Trojan, and Ritchie, as well as other products for your operation. Find your farm supplies and automatic waterers at PeteCoSupply.com. That's PETECO Supply.com. PeteCo Supply.
Okay, so we've discussed here a little bit about raw milk, butter, and how good it is, because we know.
We're just biased a little bit.
Yes. In order to make raw butter, you need to find it. If you do not have your own cow, you need to find a source for raw milk if this is a journey you're going to take.
Because I'm fortunate, there are a few people in the area that sell it.
Yes.
No, but I have no idea how you go about finding somebody if you live like in a town. You know, like if you live in Wilmer.
Okay.
How do you find, besides word of mouth?
Okay, yeah. Word of mouth is one way. If you know somebody who already drinks raw milk or buys raw milk, there is a website called realmilk.com.
Okay.
And it has a search on there. And raw milk farmers are actually registered in there. And so you can just type in your zip code and it'll give you within a certain radius all the farms that sell raw milk. And that's sheep, goat, cow.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I know there's a camel dairy somewhere here in Minnesota, but I don't know if they're registered on there or if they sell raw milk. I do not know, but I believe there is a camel dairy somewhere.
I'm like going, that is very intriguing.
Our farm is listed on there, and it usually tells you what they sell. Not all raw milk dairies do cream. We do sell cream off of our farm. Not all of them do, so you might have to learn how to remove your own cream.
Separate your own cream.
But still, you still got raw milk, and that's the key.
I mean, it's as simple as, I use a gravy ladle. I leave my milk set however, whenever somebody pulls out a half gallon of milk to drink, I'm like, oh wait, let me get that cream. And so I just use a gravy ladle and scoop it out and put it in another jar. I mean, I'm not getting every last drop of cream, but I'm getting enough to use.
Right. And so then once you've found your source of raw milk and cream, whether that be your own cow or the neighbors or some other farm that you trust.
Yes.
Make sure you trust your farmer.
You say, ask them their practices. How do they clean before they milk? How do they clean the udder and stuff like that? They should
be able to tell you all that stuff and show you if you want.
And you say they should let you see their milk room and their milk parlor.
Yep. I totally think they should be very transparent. Very, very transparent with how they do their animals. In fact, I got a call today on someone who was just happened to be passing through Minnesota asking if she could get milk from me. And she did. She had lots of questions on how we sanitize, if we give tours. Not that she wanted one. She just wanted to know if we did it. And how we milked, what kind of cows I had, what I fed them, and if I vaccinated or I used any antibiotics. Of course, we don't use antibiotics out here because we're certified organic.
Yep.
But there are vaccines you can give being certified organic. So that is a very good one to ask your farmers. Even if they're organic, there's a lot of stuff you can still give your animals. And if you're anti-vaccine, you might want to know that information.
Yeah.
You got your milk or your cream, but we'll talk about getting milk as a whole product.
Yeah.
And now you got to get the cream off of there. So you just talked about
I just ladled it
using
off.
a ladle, and I do advise you to leave your milk sit. Do not move it. Do not shake it. You want to get that cream line. Don't jiggle it because you want that heavy cream that's on top. And milk does separate into different creams. Your heaviest cream is on top, and then there's a light cream in the center. And then I've read that there's another layer in there right above the milk that people call coffee cream, but I use heavy cream in my coffee.
Oh, no, yeah. Yeah. And actually, I always just, I'd made an iced coffee before we came out here. And I'm like, where's my iced coffee? It might be sitting on top of my car.
Whoops.
Yep.
But anyway, so we use a cream separator out here. We have one from, it's a Motor Sitch from Slavic Beauty, and I have found it. Found it on Amazon. That's where I ordered our cream separator.
Oh, okay.
And we've had our cream separator for 2 years and last month, I believe. I think I got it in March. That thing runs daily here. It's very rare.
Oh, I suppose that saved you lots of time.
Oh, yes. In fact, before we got the cream separator, I rarely did anything with our cream. I personally, I don't like skim milk, so I like whole milk. So we just drank it whole, and I simply bought coffee creamer at the store.
I find that is so funny.
But that is what we did until we got that separator. And that changed everything out here. We should have had that years ago.
Yeah.
I found it in it was a refurbished unit.
Oh,
and
okay.
so I got it for about half price. It was worth every penny paid for itself in less than a month.
Oh.
If you don't have more than one cow, it probably isn't
not
worth
worth
it. But I have many cows.
Yeah.
And so for us, definitely worth it. And there's lots of cream separators out there.
Oh, okay. So it's not like one brand has the market.
No, and they're all over. Mine happens to be electric. They do have hand ones. Stay away from anything that's made in China. That comes from your husband, too. The motors aren't as good. They're kind of a knockoff, cheap knockoff that is really expensive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do your research on that. And so you need to separate your cream. Everything I read is that if you're going to separate it manually, like you do with a ladle or whatever, you really need to let that milk sit in your refrigerator for at least a day, 2 days. The more it'll separate and the better your thick cream will be. Here, because we have the separator, our milk comes up from the barn and it is separated immediately.
Before it's cooled.
Before it's even cooled. Separated immediately, and then our cream is chilled. That's how we do it. The pigs usually get the majority of our skim milk because we do gallons of milk.
Oh, yeah.
We do gallons. I could not make enough mozzarella cheese to use that up. So our pigs get most of that. And like I said before, I don't like skim milk. We always have whole milk in our refrigerator.
Well, no, technically though, because I want that cream because for current projects. But yeah, but it still has a little bit of milk.
I was just going to say you're probably at that 2%.
Yeah, probably.
Type,
but yeah, the
equivalent of 2%. Anyway.
Yeah, but the whole milk is much better.
Yeah,
I prefer.
It feels good on your palate.
Yes, and you put a little chocolate powder in that. It does feel sinful then. Like, oh yeah, this is like the store-bought chocolate milk. Yep.
The next step you really need to decide is if you're going to make sweet cream butter or cultured butter. We only make sweet cream butter here. Now we've thought about doing cultured. I had one of my milk customers actually make some cultured butter and she shared it with me. And I really didn't care for it, but I'm not one who likes that tangy.
Yeah, you don't like sour cream.
I don't like
cottage
yogurt.
Cheese. So yeah, I could see you not liking cultured
I didn't care
buttermilk.
for it. So I don't know a whole lot about making cultured butter. So we're not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about sweet cream butter because that's what I know.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do cultured butter some other time. So once you have your cream separated from your milk and you've decided you're going to make sweet cream butter, so you need to use it in the next few days. And some people, collect it until they have enough.
Even, like I buy a gallon of milk for us to drink. A gallon of milk is not going to give you, it's going to get you maybe a little over a pint.
Maybe. It all depends.
Depends on which cow I get.
It all depends on your
time of year.
Time of year, feed, which cow is being milked, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of variables there. But I would say that if you're making sweet cream butter, your cream should only maybe sit up to maybe 7 days before it's going to start to culture.
It's going to. I read a word and I liked it. It starts to evolve.
Evolve, yes. And so then you might end up in the cultured butter department.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably how you get it.
Yeah. Once you've got enough cream to make your butter, and you need to make your butter. So it's really simple. All you need to do is you need to have some type of a churn, whether that be a jar, your KitchenAid mixer, your blender, your food processor, or an actual butter churn, which we use here. We use a milky butter churn. You have to decide how you're going to do it. So if you're going to,
and how much money you want to put into it.
Basically.
I mean, a jar, it's any jar, an old spaghetti sauce jar will do.
Yep. The thing is with a jar is that besides having that tight fitting lid that I talked about earlier, you only fill the jar half full of cream.
Oh, need the room for the
because
agitation.
you need it to agitate. So that's the most important thing to remember about doing the jar method is that you do not want to fill it too full because it won't agitate correctly. And that is it. Well, I should say you do need to bring your milk up to a certain temperature. For us, 55 to 60 degree cream works best. Now, I've seen other people say they take it straight out of the refrigerator and use it. Some bring it to room temperature, whatever that is in your house. So you got to kind of play around with it because I really think it makes a difference. Once again, the farm it came from, your cow, you know how your cream reacts, whatever. And it might,
with your environment.
Yeah, it might take a little bit because if we don't warm our cream the way we know it should be, it either takes longer to churn. Sometimes it churns immediately. Sometimes it turns really quick. And the thickness of your cream makes a huge difference too as to how fast it will turn.
Okay.
And I think the age of your cream makes a difference too. You know, for us,
your cream is always about the same age.
Yes, we try to do it within 2 to 3 days because if we do it the same day, we don't get the butter yield that we do by leaving it.
Yeah,
that's just something we've discovered in the process of time.
Yeah,
and we've tried super thick cream for butter, and it gets to be very, very hard to shape and use. The butter gets really, really hard.
Oh, okay.
With that really high butter fat. We actually turned our cream separator down a little bit to make our cream a little bit thinner because I think we end up with a better butter product. So it's just something you have to learn. It's just part of the learning curve or whatever. But I mean, for the most part, making butter is really quite simple.
Oh, yeah. Now, there's the one trick you told me if I wanted to use my KitchenAid. What do you want to do?
Oh, yes. So, okay, we talked about the jar, and a blender comes with a lid.
Yep.
I did butter when we had a single milk cow, Daisy. I did butter we had a Ninja mixer. And it actually had kind of like a paddle in it. And that worked really slick. That didn't take any time at all to make butter in there. You can use a KitchenAid mixer. That's very common.
I've seen that on videos and stuff.
So the biggest thing with a KitchenAid mixer is that you need it can make a real mess when it actually turns, when you get your butter and your buttermilk, because it's slopping around in there so fast that it will splatter everywhere. So I actually have a splatter guard on my on my mixer. It came with it when I went my KitchenAid mixer. And you need to throw a towel over the top of that as well.
Oh, even with the splatter guard.
Oh, yes, because it'll come out of every little crevice. Now, mine is a plastic like pour one, but I did see on Amazon they have actually a silicone one that goes over the top and almost seals your bowl. Now, I don't know. I don't have any experience with it, but I would think that would be a nice little investment if you're going to make butter. If that's how you're going to do your butter. Yep, if you're going to do butter in a KitchenAid mixer. And then, of course, the other thing is you can get yourself a churn. And there's a bazillion different types out there.
Oh, yeah.
You can get electric. You can get a hand crank. I mean, they're glass, metal. I don't know if they sell wooden ones anymore, but I saw lots of them in my research from olden days.
Yeah.
And my dad talked about making butter on their dairy farm as a kid. And they did the whole plunger in the wooden barrel thingy or whatever. On our farm, we have the Milky brand. It's an FJ10. It holds up to a gallon of cream.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of cream.
Yeah, that's a lot of cream. And we've done less. I think we've done as little as a half gallon. But for us, if we're going to go through the work, we're going to put a gallon in there. We plug it in and it goes. Hand cranking, I'm at the age where that would be.
No. My shoulder would be.
Yep, my shoulders would be shot.
She's making stretches my shoulder.
But, if you're thinking you might not have electricity at some point.
You have,
my churn won't work.
Or you have little kids that could sit and crank.
So it's kind of a personal choice on that
money-wise, because I'm sure an electric one is more expensive than a hand crank one, I'm sure.
Okay, the electric is $300 to $400 more is what I'm being told. So
budget is an issue.
Yes, that is about it as far as making the butter.
Yeah.
Now, after your butter has broke, and then when I say it's broke, I mean you've got a clump of butter and you've got a bunch of buttermilk in there. Now you've just made natural buttermilk.
Yep.
And that's pretty valuable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you can use that, anywhere. Well, in any recipe that requires milk, you can use buttermilk in it. Your milk from sweet cream butter is not cultured though.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how uncultured buttermilk works in a lot of recipes we have today because most recipes call for a cultured buttermilk. So I don't know how that would work. Any recipe I've tried our buttermilk in, it has been a recipe that's for fresh buttermilk, which is uncultured. Because my recipe calls for cultured buttermilk in my biscuits. And I haven't tried our buttermilk in those biscuits. I haven't.
Oh, okay.
Because I make cultured buttermilk.
You make fresh cream buttermilk. You don't make cultured buttermilk.
We get fresh cream buttermilk off of our butter.
Oh, and then you
But I also make cultured buttermilk.
Okay.
From whole milk, though. It's not the same.
Okay.
It's not the same. That's how I make my cultured buttermilk.
Okay.
I have tried putting like a cultured buttermilk, using like a cultured buttermilk from the store and putting it into our buttermilk to see if it will culture
it. Okay.
And it does culture it, but it's just a little on the weird side.
I like these technical terms.
It's just a little, and I haven't really had a chance to really play around with it yet to see if it really works just like a cultured buttermilk from the store.
Well, baking wise, what are you using in
baking wise and
recipes?
that type of thing. I just haven't gotten that far with it.
As though you haven't, you need another project.
Right. So you end up with butter and you end up with buttermilk. The next thing you need to do is you need to wash your butter. And this is probably the most important
it's a critical step
in making butter. You have to wash your butter. And if you're doing it by hand, it can be kind of a little tedious process.
Yes.
Because you need to keep rinsing that butter. And most people just do it with their hands. And they just constantly rinse. You know, there's things called butter paddles that you can help squeeze out some of the buttermilk, and you just keep manipulating it. When I did it by hand, I actually put gloves on, and so I wouldn't get all the greasiness all over my hands, and just under the running water and just constantly shaping, pushing, prodding, whatever, trying to get it to run clear.
Yeah, the few times I've done it, that was the hard part.
That is the most tedious chore, and it's hard on my hands.
Yeah. Now I don't think I could do it at my age. You know, I don't have arthritis, but yet if I overuse my hands, they're stiff the next day.
In comes our butter churn. Now, the Milky brand butter churn that we have actually has a spout on the bottom, and it allows us to take out all of the buttermilk, cap it, and we can rinse our butter using the machine. Now, a lot of churns are not like that. Your glass churns aren't like that. You have to dump it out. You have to dump everything and put it back in. But Rich actually, I believe he rinses our butter for 5 minutes. He takes like 4 cups, about a quart of cool water, pours it in the churn, lets the churn
do its thing,
manipulate the butter and everything, empties it out, starts over, and does this for about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And our butter and he keeps going until it's runs clear. So it takes about 4 to 5 times of that rinsing the way he does it with that churn. That is one of the questions we get all the time about our butter churn is, does it do everything? And it does besides separate the cream. No. It doesn't separate the cream off the milk, but it does everything else for the butter. It rinses it for us. I mean, you still have to work it, but there's no hands on. There's no hands on it. It churns it. It then rinses it for us. And then if you're adding salt, we also use the churn to put salt in. Incorporate the salt. That's about it. For us, we weigh our butter, and then according to the weight is how we add our salt.
Okay.
And our salt, we do 1 teaspoon of salt per pound of butter. That seems to work for us. We do use Redmond salt. That's the only salt we use in our butter. You have to have a really fine salt. That's the biggest thing. It has to be almost a powder. That works the best because it dissolves and you don't have crunchy little pieces. Yeah. I've tried using
that's with cheese too.
Yep. Do
you use that with your cheese?
No, I do not. Actually, I use a kosher salt with my cheese.
Okay.
The cheese is a little bit better, but I don't think you can use like a Himalayan salt.
No, I did my first batch.
Yeah. But that's the one thing.
It's a little crunchy.
Yeah. There's not enough in the butter to dissolve those bigger crystals, so you need to have something that's extremely fine. And we use Redmond salt, and it used to be called popcorn salt because it's kind of like a powder.
Yeah,
I don't know what it's called now because they changed the name of it. That's what we use, and then you need to do something with your butter. Now you've got it salted or unsalted.
Yep.
And now you need to package it somehow or another. Now on our farm, We put it into 1/4 pound sticks. And so I weigh all the butter. Rich works the paddles and the board, and he shapes our butter. So we make rolls. So they're like little logs, 4 ounces, which is 1 stick, half a cup. And he makes rolls for our salted, and he squares it up like the stuff from the store in the quarters and makes some little boxes, whatever, rectangles for our unsalted. So when I look in the freezer, I just have to visually, I know I don't even have to read what I wrote on there. Yep. I don't have to read my little labeling. And that is about it. I store mine in Ziploc bags. I put 4 in there. So I have 1 pound of butter. I've seen other people who use a parchment paper, put their butter to store their butter in. They wrap it in parchment paper. You could probably use wax paper. I've seen people put it in, plastic containers, Tupperware tubs, whatever,
whatever they got.
Yeah, whatever you got. When we first started, I wrapped ours in saran wrap, plastic wrap. That worked too.
Yeah,
that worked
whatever,
fine.
Whatever you
and
have.
if you get all of the buttermilk out correctly, you should not have butter that goes rancid, because that's the biggest thing that happens if there's buttermilk left in. And our butter, we can leave it sit on the table. I leave it out.
Oh yeah, we do too.
It does not bother me to leave it out. We eat a lot of butter, so it doesn't last very long.
No, yeah. I bet a stick goes by in 3. Now, if I've made bread, it's gone very quickly.
Yes.
But yeah, I bet a stick doesn't. My husband uses it every morning when he fries eggs. If I happen to fry eggs for myself, I use butter. I think I read it was like 7 days that it would sit on the counter and not start to evolve.
Yes.
But yeah, getting the buttermilk out is the biggest issue.
Yep. You need to make sure you have that water. The water is running clear before you decide to do anything. Take it any step further with, shaping it, putting salt in it, whatever. You want to make sure that that's completely clean so you don't end up with rancid butter. And if you're questioning it, just make sure you put your butter back in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
I believe that our raw cream butter has the same shelf life as pasteurized butter or butter from the store. I don't have any problem. I haven't had anything go rancid on me. It stores in the freezer for a really long time.
Yeah.
I had some stuff that I've discovered at the bottom of the freezer, some unsalted butter, and that was still just as good. And I bet it was 6 months old, maybe 8 months old, and it worked just fine.
Everything that you've given me has lasted. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had it that long, but I'm sure a month or so.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that it would last for 6 months in the refrigerator, just because it's going to age, evolve, as you call it. So it will, it's going to happen. It's a raw product.
Yeah, it's a raw product.
That's just, you're not stopping it by putting it in the refrigerator. You're just simply slowing it down. Where in the
like
freezer,
any other
you're stopping it.
Yeah, that's like any fermented product. It's still fermenting in the fridge.
Correct.
And stuff. Because the few times that I did make butter, that was the issue. I did not get it rinsed well enough, and it soured quickly on the kitchen counter.
I was going to say, by hand, I never got our butter completely. Yep, it would change. We're like, now having that churn has really changed it. Your buttermilk that comes off of your butter is a secondary product, basically. And now I've read where you need to use it in the next couple of days, but when I talked to our friend Kelsey, she says she lets it sit in the refrigerator till it gets really good and ripe, and then she uses it for pancakes and biscuits and that type. That's how she does it. And I don't know if that, when she says that, if it means that it's cultured a little bit for her in the refrigerator.
I would assume so.
But if you leave it sit in there, you make sure you check it to make sure it's still good.
Yeah, you use the senses God gave you, your nose, your,
Yep.
if you dare taste it.
Yep.
I mean, if you can't stomach it, don't use it.
I have heard that fresh buttermilk does really well for, like, if you're making liver, it helps if you soak it in buttermilk, it helps take some of that livery taste out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't really eat liver that way, so I don't really know, but I've had a couple people tell me that. Buttermilk can also be used as your culture for, just like you would use cheese whey or yogurt whey or whatever to make your kimchi or sauerkraut,
whatever. There are so many fermented vegetable combinations.
Yeah, that is another way you could use that up. Let's see.
One thing that did I miss
something?
Just a minor fact. This is from rawfarmsusa.com. One of their biggest thing was leave your butter on your counter, but then when you go to use a clean silverware, and if you don't get enough the first time and you have to go back, they even went so far as to get out another knife so they wouldn't get food particles in it. Because if you're not using it fast enough, it may develop mold. But their thing was, it's just like a cheese. If it does develop mold, just scrape it off and go on. Throw the mold away and keep going. It's still good.
Oh,
and
how interesting. Well, we use the same knife all day long on ours.
I think we do too.
It might be a couple days actually.
So it's like, but I think you're using yours fast enough that it's not going to mold.
Most likely. Yeah.
But if you happen to have somebody gifts you and you're a single person in a single household, I could see it happening.
I could. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. In our little search here, I found some other uses for butter if you're overwhelmed with butter and you don't know what to do with all of it. But personally, I would want to consume it, probably then not use it in most of these applications.
Oh, okay. I'm like, all right, I want to know.
here's a bunch of things that I found that you can actually use raw milk butter for. Skincare. Now, we talked a little bit about putting it on a wound, that type of thing. But somebody was telling me, one of my customers was telling me that she has a daughter with eczema and she uses it on those areas of skin and it seems to help.
Oh.
I thought, well, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose if you've got all these antioxidants and all these good nutrients, just like with kefir, because you use kefir on every wound there is.
Yep.
That butter would probably work the same way.
Yeah. Here's a thought. How back when we were kids, if you got a burn, you were told to put butter on it.
That's true.
And then, of course, by the 80s, they were telling you, don't do that. All that does is keep it burning. Yeah. So now it makes me think, it's like, oh, is that another thing that somebody decided, no, you're going to use my product, and so we're going to do a good campaign program.
Right. Yeah. I know Jill Winger she's been on Facebook lately on a campaign against these big corporations and trying to make us think that we shouldn't make stuff at home because it's going to be bad for you or whatever, using your natural products and stuff.
I'll have to go delve into this.
Yeah, you have to she's really on a kick right now with that. And it's very interesting to see what she's come up with
what she's
doing. Butter also naturally de-sticks things, meaning there are natural oils in butter that are perfect for combating any and all things sticky. If you have been, say, doing craft projects and you've got glue all over your fingers, put some butter on it first.
Oh.
And then wash your hands with soap and water. It's supposed to take that residue off. I'm going to have to try this little trick because when I take labels off of my glass jars, my spaghetti sauce, whatever, pickles, whatever I've bought, I've put olive oil on mine to take that residue off. I'm going to try butter because I've got lots of butter. I have to buy olive oil. I don't have to buy butter. So I'm going to try that and see if that works because olive oil works really well. It takes that completely off of there. And so that was something I also read that it makes an excellent gum remover from your hair. So those of you who have little kids.
Oh yeah. As a hairdresser, I used to tell her peanut butter
works, but they say butter works as well. So if you've got lots of butter, try that. It comes out.
It's better than cutting a hunk out of somebody's hair.
Yeah. It comes out pain-free is what I'm told. It will also remove tree sap from your car.
Let's go smear butter on our car.
It said to take a soft cloth with some butter on it, put it wherever the sappy parts are, and rub it on there, and then come back and you wipe that off, and then come back and wash it with soap and water, and the sap will be gone. Now I do this, putting butter on a knife before you're going to cut something sticky, such as taffy, marshmallows, those things. I do that. So that is something that I do to make the knife slide through my sticky items better.
Yeah.
Yep. Butter also works as a WD-40 substitute if you don't have any. It also said that it works well on cast iron to make it shiny, which makes sense to me. I mean, you gotta grease them anyway, right? Butter or
I can see
fat.
In your house where butter, you have an abundance of butter, but in my house where butter is a gift from you, and it's. And then so
it's treasured.
It's treasured in my house, and so but I have much more lard, so I use lard for that.
You can also use it to shine up your leather items. It has amino acids in it, which protects it from ruining your leather. is what I was reading. And I was, here's one. You can put butter on the edge of your cut cheese to seal it so that it doesn't dry out or get mold on it.
That makes sense because I think I've read that, seen
like,
it in videos where if you're going to going to bandage, what they call bandage your cheese, is that you use cheesecloth and an oil of some sort. And I could see using butter. It would take a lot of butter. Yeah. I think I did watch a video where they used butter and they were on a dairy, and so they had their own butter like you. Yep. And so they had abundance of butter. And
but I thought even for store-bought cheese, when you cut open a block or whatever and just put it on that cut edge. I mean, and you can also put it on the cut edge of an onion before if you cut up an onion or you cut it in half or whatever and put it on the cut edge and then put it in plastic wrap and put it in your refrigerator. It'll help keep that from drying out. Hadn't heard that one before. And, onions and butter are pretty good when they're in a frying pan. So
that on top of a steak. Yep.
Yep. Adding butter to your boiling water before you cook pasta.
Okay.
Causes it suppresses it from boiling over.
Oh.
Because it doesn't foam.
I was thinking it wouldn't stick together.
No, this is what this said. I don't know. See, I've heard that too about so that it doesn't stick if you put some oil in there.
Yeah.
But then people say then your sauce doesn't stick.
Yeah.
I would assume that the butter's going to react the same way, but it was just another
personal preference.
Yep. And then of course, if you have a stuck ring on your hand, butter, it makes a very nice lubricant to remove a ring if you need to. And it also removes the fish smell from your hands. You're supposed to put it on your hands first and then wash with soap and water and your fishy smell will be gone. I wouldn't know for sure on that one. And of course, you can make your own coffee creamer. I had talked earlier about, how we had raw milk here, but we didn't utilize the cream for our coffee we bought at the store, but you can actually make your own coffee creamer.
So in the keto world, low carb world, you can take and put a tablespoon of butter in your coffee in place of creamer.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember. They have a name for it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about too. Butter's basically a moisturizer type thing. And so people put it on their skin. You can use it as a lip balm. I've heard that you can put it on your cuticles.
Yeah.
And help with dry skin on your hands and stuff. Yeah, I know. I'm like, I could use some right now.
Use some right now.
Yeah.
Beauty treatment later.
Over. Yeah. So those are those are just a few things you can use besides baking and everything. And raw milk butter can be used in place of store-bought butter and just about any recipe.
Oh yeah.
I
sit and say, that's just a given.
Yeah,
but it's probably not. To
it
some
might
people.
not be to somebody. It's really. It's special, but you can still use it just as you would utilize your store-bought butter.
Your pasteurized butter.
Your pasteurized butter. It works just as well. I haven't had to do anything that alter any recipe.
No.
When I make cookies or bars or pie crust, whatever.
My bread, I just throw it in my bread. I just
put it in my bread. Yep. And it works. It works just exactly the same. It's just that it's more nutrient dense for you and probably more health.
I always just think it tastes better.
It tastes better. It's healthier for you. I highly recommend it. It's not hard to do. Takes a little time.
Takes a little time.
Yep, takes a little time. But
if you don't have the time, sweet talk somebody into doing it for you.
If you've ever had raw milk butter, you will not go back to store-bought.
No, it's hard.
Yep. You will not go. You might go back for baking, but you're not going to go for your table butter.
Because I still have some store-bought stuff in the freezer, but I used some of it the other day and I'm like, I need to use this up. It's been in there in years and I'm starting to taste it now.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, I need to, because I probably have probably 6 pounds left in there. And it's like, I need to pull that out and use some of it in my baking or something.
Yeah.
Cooking. But not on my bread.
But not on your bread, on your homemade bread. You can't beat fresh butter on that. So to recap and make butter, you need to find a source for milk and cream, whether that be your own cow or from another farm, raw milk. You then separate your milk and cream. You let it age for a day or two, preferably. You don't have to, but preferably. You bring it to... and you're chilling it at that time. You're chilling it. Don't leave it sitting on the counter. You're going to make something else. We're making sweet cream butter here. And then you bring it up to the temperature that you need. Ours happens to be 55 to 60 degrees. You put it in your churn, whether that be
a jar,
mixer, blender, actual churn, and you churn your butter. Then you need to make sure once it breaks, You want to take your buttermilk off of it and put that aside for another project. And you want to rinse your butter until it runs clear. The water must run clear before you're done, whether you do it in the churn or you do it by hand. The water must run clear so you don't end up with a rancid product. And then you salt it, unsalt it, shape it, whatever you're going to do with it, put it in the containers that you want, and it goes into the refrigerator or into the freezer. And it is as simple as that. I mean, it's simple. It does take a little bit of time. So I'd like to thank you for tuning in today and listening to us talk about making raw milk butter, all the way from a cow to butter. There we are. There's our process. Yum, yum. We'd like to give a special thank you to picosupply.com for sponsoring our podcast. So until next time.
Put some kefir on it.
Thank you for listening to the Homestead Podcast's latest episode. Your hosts, Carol Radke and Jamie Kappas, are Two Gals Homesteading. To learn more, go to twogalshomesteading.com or the Two Gals Homesteading Facebook page at facebook.com/twogalshomesteading. Editing, audio production, and marketing of the Homestead Podcast is the responsibility of Media Trendsex. The Homestead Podcast is an audio product of Media Trendsex, a limited liability company, based in Minnesota, USA.